that speak to the situation I'm in. And he is a great guide. He really is a great guide to me. So I really do have this marvelous personal resource in my personal rabbi, my brother-in-law, who is really much more like a brother. I mean, I've known him for 44 years, who is almost like a second father, as well as an older brother to me. So that matters a lot. But yeah, I mean, I think weighing rights and wrongs is a matter of intense study, and not just study of quote-unquote ethics, but also study of the facts, of the pertinent facts, of knowing. You've got to know stuff. It's one of the things that I encounter all the time, say, around the issue of immigration.
Yeah.
People have lots of opinions, but don't know anything. And it's good to know things. I mean, knowing things makes a difference. Knowing things leads you to a different set of moral conclusions. I always find myself rather amused when I go and speak in a synagogue, particularly in Reform synagogues, when my worst antagonist is invariably the rabbi, who will often interrupt what I'm saying, and will jump on me, and who will be, who has only three things to say. We were immigrants. He will use eisegesis and tear Vayikra 1933 totally out of context, and then say that anyone who disagrees with him is a nativist, and then he's finished because he has nothing else to say. And then I will, start posing questions. I mean, I have gone so far as to give congregational rabbis a 10-point quiz on immigration policy to show how ignorant they are. I mean, you have to know something. You have to know something. As I say, I'm a great believer in knowing things, in reading books. I tell people, come back when you've read this, and we'll have a conversation. When I used to be a professor, and students would want to talk about something, I would say, go away and read. Luckily, I did my graduate work in England, and I taught in England. When you have tutorials, it's really nice. I mean, you say to someone, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. These are 4 books. Come back in 2 weeks, and let's have a conversation. I don't think that ethics can be separated from knowledge, and the two inform each other. And I don't know if that's a good answer, but it's the best I can think of.
No, it's great. What does the rabbinic response that you've encountered so often that you just elucidated? I'm from Australia. I would call it like blithering, idiocy.
There you go. In fact, that is the gist of it. I could think of worse ways to describe it.
What do you think that blithering idiocy says about the wisdom of those rabbis in areas outside of immigration?
Well, my guess is they don't have any. My guess is they don't have any. It's rather like, it's like when that horrible day that we all have when we discover that the New York Times is a rag. When it's writing about something that we know a lot about and it's all wrong,
mm-hmm.
and then you have to make that terrible leap. And then if you know a lot about more than one thing, which happens to be the case with me, and I'm sure is the case with you, then you go to the next thing, and you find out that the cup is empty. And then you make the assumption that there's something fraudulent going on. And my guess is that these people who are willing to speak in grand, rousing terms about things about which they are pig ignorant in one area are willing to do it in another. And to some extent, but the weirdest thing is that there's almost a correlation between the degree of their passion and their ignorance. At least one would think that if one were ignorant, or at least, ignorance isn't a sin. You can correct it by study. It's not like stupidity. But that they're so willing to do this, I mean, it seems to me that bespeaks a kind of arrogant narcissism, which may be the reason, the incorrect reason they became rabbis in the first place. I mean, they obviously were not cut out to be rabbis. I mean, they lack wisdom. They lack modesty. I mean, they lack what I think of as some of the virtues that one would wish to have in one's spiritual leader. To be that arrogant and ignorant, it seems to me to be an absolute disqualification. To be standing in front of a congregation, leading it in its knowledge and understanding of its tradition and in its faith activities, I can't imagine qualities that are less appropriate.
I never forget when someone gets up in the pulpit and speaks passionately about a subject of which they know almost nothing. Like, that is like forever emblazoned on my mind, and it's very hard for me to take that person seriously on anything after I've experienced that.
Absolutely. And it's particularly awful because, I mean, they're speaking, literally ex cathedra, and they are in the pulpit, and they've got the Torah behind them in the bima, and they have really an enormous authority. I maybe they're aware of it, maybe they're not. My guess is they do know. And it's misused. And, I mean, one wants to stand up and yell, heretic, idiot, get out. You're a disgrace. And I've had to encounter this again and again and again and again and again. More, I should say, with Reform rabbis. I have to say that the entire culture of the Reform synagogue is very different from that of a conservative synagogue. I wish I knew more. In fact, I would love to speak to Orthodox congregations. I've never had an invitation to one. We've had ads in Jewish newspapers, including newspapers that have served the Orthodox community. I've simply never been invited. But my experience of conservative congregations is that, well, first of all, I would say perhaps, I mean, I'm making kind of very rough, I'm doing very rough guesstimation, but my guess is that probably no more than 30% of a given conservative congregation is politically correct, whereas that's probably true of 70% of the members of a Reform congregation. And invariably, the most left-wing person in the room in a Reform congregation is the rabbi. And in conservative shuls, yeah, I mean, the rabbi tends to be to the left of the congregation, but the congregation usually makes its unhappiness known in one way or another. But it is a problem. I mean, I have to say, it is a problem in conservative Judaism. I was looking, for example, at the I'm right now just finishing a huge backgrounder that I'm writing for the Center for Immigration Studies, which is basically describing the American Jewish establishment as one Potemkin village. What one finds is, if you look at, for example, the number of organizations that endorsed Progress by Pesach, I mean, which, of course, as you know, went down to to put it mildly, I mean, we went out with a whimper. I mean, it was, if I had been Gideon Aronoff, I would have thrown myself on my sword. I mean, 26 Jewish organizations claiming hundreds of thousands of members managed to get something over 3,000 people to sign a petition. I mean, my God. I mean, that's a calamity by anybody's definition. But, I mean, the one thing that you feel again and again with the Jewish establishment is the outrageous way in which it has basically usurped the authentic voice of American Jews. And where that usurpation is most outrageous is that the Rabbinical Assembly of Conservative Judaism endorsed this, and only a very, very small minority of their members would take such a position. I mean, I've spoken in probably 40 conservative congregations, at least, and to say that 90% of the people are on my side is putting it mildly. I mean, they are thrilled to hear me speak. They're thrilled to hear a voice from the Bima that's not politically correct, that's not some apparatchik from the Jewish establishment, that's not their rabbi, droning on about, Leviticus 19 without recognizing, the actual meaning of Ger v'Toshav. It does mean sojourner. That does mean a temporary resident. Richard Elliott Friedman's a pretty good authority on biblical Hebrew. They just go on, and